Our next guest is Larry Keene. He's with the National Shooting Sports Foundation. How's it going, Larry?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So what is Don't Lie for the Other Guy? Kind of like
So
that.
this is a program that NSSF has been doing in partnership with ATF since about 1999, and it's two parts of the program. One is to help ATF to educate and train firearms retailers how to be able to identify and stop illegal straw purchases of firearms where somebody's buying a gun for somebody else who can't legally buy the gun. So they're acting as a straw man. And the second part of the program is to do public service announcements to let the would-be straw purchaser know it's a serious felony to buy a gun for somebody else who can't buy the gun for themselves. And you can go to jail for up to 10 years or get a fine of up to $250,000. So straw purchasing is one way that criminals illegally obtain firearms. It's a small way, but it's an area where the industry can partner with ATF to try to prevent bad guys from getting guns. So we've been doing it in a nationwide program since about 1999.
I like initiatives like this because they're effective. There's this notion of always, we constantly engage in this idea of more laws, legislation on top of legislation, instead of dealing with things in the real world. And I think initiatives like this do that.
Right.
Because effectively there's nothing to stop straw purchases, nothing, except for at the point of contact, which is to sell, and somebody utilizing their discretion in the way that you guys are advocating.
Right, and the dealers are on the front lines in helping law enforcement prevent bad guys from getting guns this way. And it can be, as you say, very, very difficult for a retailer to know whether somebody's doing this for improper purposes. I mean, some situations are pretty obvious where two people come in and one person points to the gun and then gives the other guy the money and then walks away. That's pretty self-evident. But it can be much more nuanced than that. And so this helps to train the retailers what to look for and how to be able to identify these situations to prevent them from happening, and then to call law enforcement so they can do their job. And then again, it's also to make the public aware, the would-be straw purchaser, the girlfriend of the felon who just got out on parole.
Yep.
If you do this, you can go to prison, and it's a serious crime. So
people don't
this is the industry working with law enforcement.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the ignorance involved in this crime as well. Some of it, some of it unintentional, like you said, the unknowing girlfriend who's like, well, okay, I'll go buy you a gun. Now, the discerning minds would say, well, there's probably a reason why he can't buy it himself, but nonetheless, it happens.
Or it could be somebody who's an illegal firearms trafficker, let's say, and they talk to somebody at a bar and convince them, here's $50, $100, something like that. Go buy this gun for me, because they don't want their name associated with the transaction, even if they themselves could probably go in there and do it. So that's another variant that sometimes occurs. But this is not about catching rogue dealers or bad apple dealers, as the others like to say. It's helping the retailers to be a better partner with law enforcement to prevent this from happening. And as you say, a lot of times people don't realize it's a crime, and they think, well, no big deal, I'm going to get $50. And so it educates them, so that you can't do this. Now, this is also very important to distinguish a legitimate gift where you're buying the gun. Then it's going to be a gift that you give to your son or something like that, or your brother. That is still perfectly legal to do that. If you're buying it to make a gift of it, that's still legal to do. It's when you're not the actual buyer, and you're not the actual buyer, you're acting as a straw man, and that's when it's illegal. And the question, it's right there on the 4473, are you the actual buyer? And if you're not, and you say yes, and you lie on the form, that's the crime. That's why we call it don't lie for the other guy. Don't lie in response to that question.
Yeah.
But the instruction also says if it's a gift, it's legal. So sometimes people think, well, we're saying you can't buy a gun as a gift. No, we're not saying that at all. That's not what the program is about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It seems like a gray area, but it's actually a pretty definitive line.
Well.
So now, inherently, what was it that caused NSSF to really want to start this campaign?
So This goes back to the Clinton administration. They were putting out or about to put out a report about illegal firearms trafficking.
Yeah.
And that indicated that in ATF firearms trafficking investigations, a high percentage, and I've now forgotten the exact number, but a good percentage of their trafficking investigations involve store purchasing of firearms. That's not to say that's the primary way that criminals get guns, but when ATF in their trafficking investigations, they saw this pattern and they approached the industry and said, can we come up with something, to address this issue to try to help the retailers reduce the number of these occasions? And so that's the origin of the program. And again, it's started back in 1999. The first pilot program was actually in Pittsburgh, where we're going to be doing the Don't Lie program again in Pittsburgh later this week. So it sort of comes full circle about 18 years later.
Hey, gotta love it, right? Now, NSSF is also responsible for putting on SHOT Show. So
indeed,
yeah. So good old SHOT Show. Now, I will say, it was a gift and a curse. I came back with the curse of a sinus infection, but the SHOT Show bug
is known as the SHOT Show flu.
Exactly right.
Yes.
But nonetheless, had a great time out there. I always have a great time when I'm there. So for you, how was SHOT Show this year?
It was really great. It was the second largest attendance we've ever had at SHOT Show.
Really?
We don't set out, which is great news. We don't set out set records for attendance. It just
kind of happens.
It's a function of the show growing, and it's a good, positive indication of the health of the industry. So Absolutely. It was very positive. People were very upbeat. It's the result of the election. Everyone was talking about it. Obviously. We're very happy that it's President Trump and not Hillary Clinton in the White House. That would be very daunting for our industry. So people are adjusting to this new reality. I mean, you've seen a lot of articles and the NICS data. The market is normalizing. There's going to be less spikes in demand, which that's actually better for the industry long term. Slow and steady wins the race. It's difficult to manage your business trying to chase spikes. You don't know when they're going to happen.
Yep.
You don't know how long they're going to last. So, there'll still be some adjustments in the market. But as we've seen in the past, every time we come off of a spike in demand, as I tell reporters, we're coming off the peaks, but the valley floor is higher.
Yeah.
So the world is not going to end. The firearms industry is not going to go out of business. And there's a lot more gun owners out there now than there were just a couple of years ago. And retailers continually tell us that about 25% of the customers they see at retail are first-time buyers. And that's been true for a long time now.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of new target shooters, a lot of new hunters, and a lot of new people who are buying guns for concealed carry, personal protection, and things like that. All legitimate reasons. And so our job is to encourage these individuals to participate in target shooting, hunting, and if you're owning a gun for self-protection, you should go to the range and become proficient in how to use the firearm if you ever are in a situation where you actually need to use it.
Absolutely. I've always been interested in wondering how other media outlets that tend to lean more towards anti-gun on the issue of firearms, how they go about reporting on events like SHOT Show. What has been your experience with media on the other side of the debate?
Well, we don't typically let mainstream media in to the SHOT Show because of exactly that reason. I mean, we're very careful about how many mainstream media reporters will allow in to the show, because we have seen in the past they will report, very negatively about the industry. They'll, do misleading stories, and try to make the show in the industry appear to be something that it's not. So that is a constant concern, and it becomes a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's a business trade show. People are there to do business, not to answer mainstream media reporters' questions about political issues or be sandbagged. And every once in a while, someone will sneak in and sandbag an exhibitor and start asking them political questions when they're just a sales guy. They're not the company's spokesperson of things like that. So we've seen stories about the industry in the mainstream media now about how, Trump is bad for sales and, things like that. So, we were particularly careful about this SHOT Show because, either if Hillary had won, they'll be reporting about the industry trying to, stoke, fear to get people to buy guns. Not true at all. And you're just the opposite now with Trump winning. That oh my God, oh my goodness, sales are going to collapse and the industry's going to go out of business because people stop buying guns. And we're going to see organic growth, natural growth in the market that we've been seeing for the past 20 years. Something in the order of 4 to 6%, and that's what we've been seeing year over year for many, many years. It's not just all spikes in demand driven by gun control politicians like Nancy Pelosi and others, stoking fears that they're going to ban modern sporting rifles or ban magazines and ban handguns and all that sort of thing.
Yep. No, absolutely. But before we continue, we're going to take a quick break. So we're going to talk more with Larry about some new pro-gun legislation after this.